Well, thank you for joining us today as we present Toolio's Integrated Assortment Planning solution. We are excited to show you all of the functionality, but also explain how the solution resolves typical challenges for retailers in developing and maintaining assortments. My name is Mei Liang. I'm one of the solutions consultants on the team, and I joined Toolio about a month ago. I come from a merchandise planning background and have held roles in buying and retail finance. The bulk of my career was spent at Ralph Lauren and Kate Spade, and more recently, I was VP of Planning at Hanky Panky, where I helped implement Toolio. I'll be moderating the call today, and as just some housekeeping reminders, we have a Q&A section, so please throw in your questions along with your company name so that we can keep track, and we'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. And in case we don't get through all of the questions, we'll be definitely reaching out to follow up. We have our VP of Product, Peter, on the call. And so I'll hand it off to Peter.
Excellent. Thanks, May. Yeah, happy to be here with everyone. Excited to walk you through our assortment planning. For those of you who haven't met, my name is Peter Leith. I've been with Toolio for about a year now. I'm head of product here. Prior to Toolio, I've spent about 20 years in retail planning software, and I've worked with a number of fantastic brands in building and developing their assortments, putting them in the right place, and ensuring that their customer experience is maximized where possible while still meeting their financial objectives. So happy to be spending the time with you today and looking forward to taking you through the Toolio functionality. In terms of an agenda today, what we're going to be walking through is really an overview of our assortment planning offering, and really understanding things like what it means to have a holistic assortment planning approach, managing in-season performance, building new assortments, rationalizing the width and depth of the assortment, thinking about intelligently clustering assortments, understanding the supply planning and receipts and everything that we need to bring in, and visualizing the assortment. I'm going to try and keep it to 30 minutes so that we've got some time for some presentation or some questions, and I can hopefully answer some of those questions. As May said, she's going to try and moderate those questions. And let's have a great session together. So thanks very much for joining us. All right, to set the scene in terms of what we're looking at the assortment planning module as one of the pillars of Toolio's integrated retail planning suite. And if we think about the entire process, it really works in an integrated way, because typically we want to start with a merchandise plan to set the scene in terms of what the financial objectives are for the organization, where the growth is going to happen, what the different perspectives of the organization are in terms of a merchandising perspective versus a finance perspective versus a store opening closure perspective. Really, it's about building that financial picture of where we expect the organization to be in the future. The next step of the process is then to take that financial picture and translate it into an assortment that's not only going to meet those financial objectives, but is also going to be exciting and interesting to your customers at the end of the day, so that we're marrying the two functions, building a great assortment for your customers, but ensuring that that assortment meets the financial objectives. And then the final pillar is the ability to execute on that assortment. In other words, putting that product in the right place at the right time based on how you bought the product. So if you buy it for 50 stores, you don't try and stick it in 100 stores and vice versa. So really, that's how we think about that integrated retail planning process. And as I said, today, we're going to be focusing on the assortment planning function. So to set the scene, we're just going to jump into financial planning just to remind everyone from how we're moving through the process. And really, our merchandise financial planning is all about the ability to build a financial objective, as we said, being able to create a plan at different levels of hierarchy, being able to roll it up, drill it down to different levels, planning from a sales perspective, inventory perspective, receipts perspective, open to buy perspective, whether you're planning units, dollars, etc. It's really a flexible tool in which you can build those financial objectives for the organization. We'll also provide you with the ability to create different scenarios and be able to reconcile those scenarios against each other. But the important scenario is our master plan, because that's the single version of the truth at any point in time. And as we get into assortment planning and we're reconciling the bottom-up assortment to that top-down financial objective, we're going to be reconciling against the master plan in the financial planning space. Okay. So once we've developed our merchandise financial plan, the next step of the process is to start thinking about our assortment. And the first thing that I want to cover around assortment planning is this concept of a holistic assortment plan. What that really means is that if I think about an assortment of product that I'm looking at any point in time, as I change the time period, my assortment is going to change. Assortments are constantly evolving. There's new products coming in, there's core products that are carrying over, and there is new existing products that you're potentially getting rid of, marking down, clearing out of the assortment. So as you can imagine, the way that we think about the assortment evolves over time. So if I were to look at my assortment as it's currently performing, I can see a whole bunch of products that form part of that assortment. But as I start moving forward into the future, I might see the assortment changing in terms of what products are being offered. So I still have most of that assortment that I'm carrying into the summer because I'm about to launch my summer season at the moment. But as I start looking into potentially into fall, I can see that potentially only some of those products are carrying forward into fall. And as I start looking into, let's say, holiday of 2024, I might see that only 3 of those products are carrying forward. And this is this concept that same product that is existing in my assortment currently is carrying forward into my summer assortment, my fall assortment, and ultimately into this assortment over here, which is my holiday assortment for 2024. So if I just jump back to that assortment that we were looking at, the whole big view of the assortment, for any one of these products, it has some key information related to it. What is the product? Where is the product going to go? We'll talk about clustering in a little bit. When is the product available from and to? We've got various different inputs in terms of size curves and sales curves. We'll talk about those as well. But if I click on the left-hand side over here, I can then drill into the detail of any one of these products. And this is essentially going to provide me with a full item plan of what the product is expected to sell, how much inventory I'm bringing in, what receipts I need to commit to, and it gives me the entire item plan related to that product. So every product in the assortment will have an item plan for its entire life, and that will allow us to project how that product is currently performing and how we expect it to perform in the future. And a nice way of understanding that is by visualizing that assortment. And we can look at the assortment from a perspective of how we expect it to sell. And as you can see over here, I had originally forecasted that there would be some spikes over here and end of 2023, maybe that might be Black Friday. We might have a spike over here for Christmas, and then we've got some more spikes over here planned out into the future. But I can also then start looking at how I'm actualizing against that plan. So I can see over here that over Christmas and back in 2023, I actualized a lot better than I had expected for this product. And recently I've been dipping down a little bit. I've been performing under my original plan. And this leads to the first question of how does the system help us in projecting this assortment and how well this assortment is expected to perform. And you'll notice that in my metrics over here, I can click on this system plan. And you'll see when I introduce the system plan over here, the forecast for this product has been reduced. And the forecast has been reduced because my trends are showing me that that product is starting to sell a little bit lower out into the future. And as a result of that, the system is automatically projecting for me that my sales are going to be dropping down in the future. It's automatically reforecasting for me and projecting a lower sales amount. On the flip side, however, you'll also notice that there is an adjusted line. And this is key to how we think about reforecasting and utilizing all of our advanced analytics in our machine learning and our retrend functionality. Whenever we present it to the users, it's really important to us that we can provide a system-generated projection, but ultimately allow any of the users to adjust their plan as they see fit. So as a user, I can go out into the future over here and I can decide, actually, I don't like that number. I'm going to plan for 500 units of sales. The system's going to highlight that I'm deviating from what it thinks you're going to sell, But again, once I start looking at those two together, I can then see that deviation, and ultimately we record the deviation between the two so that we can subsequently review the accuracy of both the system-generated forecast as well as the user-generated forecast. Now, all of this to say that at any point in time, the user has the ability to review any one of their products in the assortment and understand how that product is expected to perform. And going back to the holistic assortment question, that means that as a user, I might make a decision to say this product, while it's selling a little bit less than I currently expect, I think it's still going to be a high performer. Therefore, I want to make a decision as a user to carry that product out into the future. And the way in which I can do that is simply just adjusting that product out to, say, week 52 in the future over here. I'm going to carry this product out all the way through to the end of the year. I can make a save to that product, and the system is then going to go and automatically generate a plan for me all the way out to the end of the year, and it's going to project how much I'm going to sell. It's going to project how much I need to bring in from an inventory perspective to support that product. So from an in-season perspective, I can review any one of these products. I also have the ability to reconcile back to my financial plan. And there's two different ways in which you can do that. The first way is via a quick roll-up up at the top over here. I can roll up my assortment plan and see what I'm projecting from a sales perspective, from an inventory perspective, from a receipts perspective, from a pricing perspective. And I can compare that to my financial plan at whatever level of granularity I define this particular assortment for. I can also go into my reporting, because underneath the assortment plan over here, I have an entire reporting module. And in the reporting module, I can then drill down to the level of detail in terms of maybe I want to break it down by brand if I'm planning from a brand perspective. And I can actually compare that to any one of the versions of my merchandise plan. In this case, I'm comparing it to the master merchandise plan. And that's my ability to reconcile at any one of those levels of the plan. So again, just going back to finalize that concept of the holistic assortment plan, if we've got this product that I've now carried through to February 2025, what it allows me to do is, as I jump into that time frame in the future of now holiday 2024, that product that I just extended is now part of my assortment during holiday 2024. And as a result of that, I can now consider that product as part of the assortment. And that means that I'm building up this assortment and it is closing the gap between that top-down financial objective and that bottom-up assortment that I'm generating. So the next question that we have to answer is, how do we fill the gap in the assortment? Now that I know that I'm carrying a few of these products out into the future, how do I actually fill that gap in the assortment? And there's a few ways in which you can do that. The first way is the most simplistic way. That's about adding a new style to the assortment. You can see that I can create a placeholder product. And that placeholder product, I can call it whatever I want. This is going to be a demo product that I'm going to create. I can start assigning different attributes to it. So whatever the attributes are that you might want to assign, you can just generate a new product from scratch and plan it as a placeholder. The reason for this is often our customers don't know what product is going to be offered far out into the future, 12, 18, 24 months into the future. But they know they want to add products in this particular space, in the apparel space, and therefore they want to create placeholders, knowing that they will replace those placeholders at a later stage. The second option that we have is to use this compare mode. And what the compare mode will do for us is it will look back into our historic assortments for whatever time period we want to, and the users can filter down to specific products that might make sense to them. They also have the ability to see how those products actually performed in the assortments. So in other words, how much did I sell? How much did I plan to sell? What was my revenue? What was my margin? How much inventory do I have on those products still? And various bits of information that can help them make decisions on products that were available historically and what they might want to do with those products out into the future. And there's a couple of ways they can think about this. I can go and select a whole bunch of these products, and if I right click on them, I have the option of extending those products through the assortment. And that would be equivalent of a core product that is just going to carry forward. Very much like what we did with this Emma sweater, where we carried it into the future. I can just take that existing product and carry it forward, and the system will then plan it all the way through the season that I'm currently planning for, in this case, holiday 2024. The other option over here is to repeat products. This would be equivalent of seasonal core products. In other words, I might offer a product during holiday 2023, and I'm going to then offer that product again in holiday 2024. And the system will then take that, all of the information, historic information of that like product, and it will copy it across to the new season. It will carry any leftover inventory across, and it will create that product as a new offering in the new season. And then the third option over there is to create like-for-like placeholders. So I can choose all of the products that I want to mimic from the last season, but I want to create new placeholders out of them. And I can quickly and easily create a whole bunch of placeholders that I then want to go and add an information to. The important thing here is that the system is creating that link between the historic products and the products that I'm planning. Therefore, we can absorb the historic expectation of how well that product is expected to perform, and all of the historic performance information that we might want to carry across from it. So if we think about the different methods, I have my ability to quickly and easily right-click, create a new placeholder product, and add it into the assortment if I just want to start from scratch. I have the ability to compare back to my historic assortments, look at products that performed well in those historic performance, and then choose whether I want to extend those products as core, repeat those products as seasonal core, or create new placeholders out of those products in case I want to mimic them and create similar versions to what I had in the historic assortments. But there is a third option in creating an assortment. And if we just jump back to our main view of the assortment plan over here, you'll see that I have the ability to create assortments within the context of an area that I might be responsible for. So for instance, if I'm responsible for men's knit tops for holiday 2024, I can create an assortment that's specifically focused on it. But it's important to understand that the products that I'm planning as part of this assortment also exist in my overall apparel assortment that is going to be planned throughout the season. So it's really just a view of the assortment at a particular time period. But by creating this assortment for the time period, it allows me to start analyzing similar products within the context of what I'm actually planning. So again, very much like the assortment screen, I also have a drop down here. And in this drop down, I can now start hindsighting how well men's knit tops did at a time period in the past. And for instance, in this particular example, if I load up that hindsighting, I'm going to look at how well all of my men's knit tops performed, in this case for holiday 2023. And the important thing of what we're doing here is we're running through a set of cleansing algorithms to identify products that potentially did or did not contribute to the assortment. So we're deseasonalizing the historic data. We're accounting for lost sales and inconsistencies in the data, where there's maybe a promotion that was running. We're deseasonalizing that. We're deseasonalizing the effect of lost sales. We're looking at whether products actually participated during that time period and should have been included in the assortment. And what's important is that we establish the relationship between our top performing products and our bottom performing products. Because what the system's going to try and do for us is it's kind of try and estimate whether we can eliminate any of this long tail of the assortment. The hindsighting analysis is there to help us understand what that long tail looks like and what would happen if we eliminated that long tail in terms of the potential loss of sales, but also the reduction in the width of the assortment could obviously have savings in terms of what I have to buy, the number of choices I have to buy, and the investment I have to make in new products. So the hindsighting analysis is there to help us understand how our assortments performed in the past. And in this case, we cleansed out a single product that was about 5% of our assortment, but it only contributed about 0.6% of the sales in the assortment. And that gives me confidence that if I had cut that product from the assortment, it probably wouldn't have made a material effect on my performance, but it would obviously have been a big portion of the assortment that I'm actually reducing in terms of the width of the assortment. So once we do all of this hindsighting, we can then analyze that width and depth, and importantly, this curve that we've developed across our top performing down to our bottom performing products. And we can then step into the next step of the process, which is called rationalization. The idea behind rationalization is that we can take the financial objective from our merchandise plan, and we can project the ideal width and depth of the assortment that should be offered in the future based on the growth that we're expected to experience in our assortment for that particular category of products. So I'm expecting about a 15% growth in the category, but the system is only recommending an additional one style in order to support that. And the user has the ability to play with that and say, what would happen if I expanded the width of my assortment a little bit more? I would then reduce the required productivity of my existing products, but I would be expanding the width of the assortment. If I contracted the width of my assortment, I would have to expand the depth of my assortment in terms of the productivity and how much I would need to buy into the existing products in order to meet the financial objectives of the organization. So this concept of hindsighting assortments, rationalizing the assortment, is really an analytical tool that the merchants can use to understand what assortment they should actually be offering. And then they can start iterating through developing that assortment. But we don't just offer one version of the hindsighting. Users can start thinking about this in various different scenarios. A classic example might be my price point of my products. How many products should I offer in premium pricing versus entry pricing versus mid pricing? My color families, my categories, my brands. So the users can go and create various different scenarios, and they can go and look at each one of those brands and say, okay, I'm going to offer 5 options for Guess, or 3 options for Mango, 4 options for Vince, etc., etc. And they can start playing with the mix of the assortment in order to drive out the ideal number of options that they want to offer. And you can do this across any product attribute that is associated with the product. So I might go down to a class level. Instead of rationalizing the entire knits tops, I might want to look at it in terms of my short sleeve versus my polos versus whatever other classes I might have. Included in this, I can also start thinking about it in terms of the mix of locations that this assortment might go into. So we can rationalize within the context of store clustering, and I'll talk about store clustering in a second. The result of all of this is that the system is then able to project out for us for each one of those classes, for each one of those clusters of locations. It's able to project how many choices we should have within the context of those different clusters. So in this case, it's recommending my e-commerce channel should have all 10 choices. My A-grade stores are also going to have all 10 choices, but my B-grade stores probably only need 9 choices, and my C-grade stores only need 7 choices. So not only are we looking at the entire width and depth of the assortment, we're also looking at the assortment wedge to understand how many choices you should be putting in each one of the grades. And from there, you can start building out what that assortment actually looks like. All right. The final step of this process is that the users have the ability to select, for instance, all of my polos over here. And I can actually see the assortment that I'm going to work with placeholder products based on the ratios that I've calculated in my assortment rationalization. And that's a really important part of developing a starting point or a starting view of the assortment so that we can build up that assortment and start adding products to it. So once I go in and see that assortment, I can then go into that assortment for my men's knits tops. And what we'll see now is that we have automatically generated all of those placeholder products for you, all the way from 1 through 10. We'll notice that the first product, the top ranked product over there, is going to go to all of my grades, whereas the bottom ranked product over here is only going to go to my web grade and my store A grade. And that allows you to then think about the new products that are going to be introduced to the assortment. Is this an all-store product, or is this a premium product that is only going to go to my web and my grade A clusters? And very quickly, speaking about clustering, when we start thinking about clusters, I can jump over here to my settings, I can go into my automated clusters, and I can start understanding various different approaches to how we might build clustering. Importantly, we can take into account multiple factors. So for instance, I can look at performance characteristics of a specific type of product, but I can also look at, for instance, the space that is available in the stores. So I'm starting to group together stores that might have a similar amount of space and might perform in a similar manner for certain types of products. And obviously we can see the web channel over here up at the top, whereas I have a grade of stores over here, a cluster of stores over here, and a cluster of stores over here. And that helps me analyze the data within the context of the stores that the product is actually going to go into. So with all of that said, what we're ultimately doing for the user is we're developing this assortment, we're creating the placeholders for them. And because we can seed a lot of the information, we can actually come up with a plan for that product. I've already got a sales plan for that product. I've seasonalized that sales plan based on the natural seasonality of the product, taking into account all of the planned promotions, taking into account the seasonal indexing of those products, and taking into account various performance characteristics related to those products. And as I start building up this assortment, again, I can go back and I can reconcile back to my financial objectives. In this case, I can see that I'm just starting to build this assortment. So from a receipts perspective, I'm still 90% off from the receipts that I need in order to hit my financial objectives. But I'm getting pretty close in terms of the margin targets, in terms of the cost targets, in terms of the selling targets that I have for these products. So that quick reconciliation is a way in which we can continue to understand how closely we are aligning our assortment with the objectives that we had set as part of the financial objectives in merchandise planning. Okay. So the next step of the process for us is to understand how we iterate through the creation of this assortment. It's all good and well that I have a placeholder product over here, but at the end of the day, I need to be able to start replacing that placeholder product with a real product. And this is where the concept of the style bank comes into play. You'll see this little button for the style bank. And what the style bank offers me is a list of all of the products that are available to me from either the PLM system or a PIM system or an ERP system. It'll give me the list of all of the products that are available to me that can be used as part of my assortment. And obviously users can filter down and figure out which products they want to include here. And it'll also highlight to the users which products have already been used in assortments and which products are obviously new to the assortment. So this brings together all of the different players in the assortment planning space in terms of the merchants, the planners, maybe it's the buyers, the finance. It's bringing everyone together to start thinking about what this assortment will look like. And it's really easy to do. If I look at all of these products and I say, okay, this is a great product, looks great from a polo perspective, I think that's going to be my top performing product. I can simply just drag that across, assign it to a placeholder. It will then replace all of the different attributes of that product. So we know it's a polo, we've replaced that. But now we'll see that the pricing has been updated on that product. It's 89 versus the average pricing of 68. We can see all of the other attributes getting associated with that product. And it's really as simple as grabbing these products and pulling them into the assortment and replacing my placeholders with real products. And it's as easy as just dragging those across and updating them in my assortment. So that process of replacing placeholders with real products gives us the ability to then project out for those real products how we expect them to do. Now, for that product that we created as part of our placeholder, as part of our rationalization process, we came up with a certain expectation in terms of how it was going to sell. Importantly, that expectation is different depending on which locations it's being sent to. So I'm expecting very high sales from my e-commerce channel, my web channel, but you can see that my productivity or my rate of sale per location is about 80 units per location per week for my grade A stores, and down to 27 units per week per location for my grade C stores. But if the user wants to start thinking a bit more practically about that product, they may go back and look at similar products in the past. Again, this ability to look at a specific time frame and say, okay, let me look at maybe my fall or my, maybe I can look at a relative time frame. Again, if this is holiday, maybe I want to look at holiday instead. But I can go back in history, I can find a relative product, and I can use that as the basis of how I think this product is going to perform instead of using the rationalization calculation. So again, we're making that connection between a historic product so that we can use it as the basis of how we think this particular product is going to perform. And what we develop there is what we term as a rate of sale model. And that rate of sale model allows us to focus in on a specific product, but I could also model anything I want to. Instead of looking at black sportswear polos, I could remove the color and just look at all sportswear polos. And this rate of sale modeling function gives us the ability to understand how certain products perform, and therefore how we expect those products to perform in the future. So ultimately, this process is iterative. Users are developing this assortment now for holiday 2024. As they're going through all of these steps, they're then going in and they're reconciling back to the financial goals. So I calculated some receipts on that. So now I'm down to about 17% of my assortment I still need to build up. So this is this process of constantly reconciling my bottom-up assortment to my top-down financial objectives. And for any one of these products, I can then drill into it and I can actually look at what the receipts plan is for this product. Because this is a seasonal product, I'm buying a seasonal receipt plan. If I wanted to change that up, I could then change that. Instead of buying for a full 10-week cover, I could change that to say 4 weeks and recalculate the receipts, and then it will flow my receipts over the entire season. So now, instead of having all my receipts coming in at the beginning, you can see how the system is flowing those receipts over the entire season, front loading my receipts up front with my safety stock, and then subsequent receipts covering demand. I could also target a specific sell-through. So if I wanted to say I want to hit a 90% sell-through, I can then just target that sell-through, recalculate the receipts, and the system will then again generate a new receipt projection accounting for that sell-through. And obviously we will then get a regeneration of what those receipts should be. And the calculated sell-through would then recalculate to 90% in that example. So those are just all the examples of how you can add sales plans to the products, how you can then add inputs to your receipt plans, what your safety stock is going to be, your frequency of your ordering, your sell-through targets, your minimum presentation factors. Taking that all into account, the system is then going to calculate our ideal receipts that we need for the product. And the user then has the ability to create recommended purchase orders where they grab all those receipts and turn it into a constrained purchase order that they would then integrate back to their vendors as they need to. Okay, so if we think about the steps that we went through there, we started with an in-season view of the assortment, the entire assortment. We started building up the concept of this holistic assortment over time. And as I was stepping through time, I was seeing their assortment reducing until such time as I started building out an increased assortment. And as a result of that, I am starting to build up what this assortment looks like. And I'm starting to get familiarity with what the assortment actually is supposed to look like at that point in time. The final step of the process is really understanding, what this assortment looks like and visualizing it. And we have some very nice visualization tools in terms of what we're looking at. And users can use all of their filtering. So if I just wanted to, again, filter down to my department, in this case, I want to go down to my knit tops. I can then just filter down to my knit tops and I can understand how those products are expected to perform over a specific time period. I could filter down to categories or divisions as well and say, okay, maybe I just want to look at my men's knit tops. But then I can also start grouping this view. So in this case, I'm looking at all of my knit tops, but I could start grouping that view and say, let's look at it at a class level, and we'll break it across the different classes. So now I can see my t-shirts assortment. I can see my polo assortment. You could even group this by the clusters. So if I wanted to group this by the automated clusters over there, I can then see, within my clusters, what does my t-shirts look like for my A grade stores, my B grade stores, etc. And that ability to visualize the assortment gives the users not only the visual view of it, but they can also see all of the planning inputs, the pricing of the product, when it's launching, etc., etc. And they can actually make changes to the assortment from a visual perspective at that point in time. So very quickly, to recap what we've looked at today, we've really looked at that starting point, which is our financial objective, to build the objective for what we want to achieve. We started thinking about an assortment from a holistic perspective, understanding what products are going to carry it forward, but also understanding that certain products, based on their performance, I want to actually be able to drill into the detail and understand how those products are performing and understand how the system is retrending those products automatically for me. And then ultimately, it's about building an assortment that is going to meet the customer's objectives, but also is going to roll up to meet your financial objectives at any point in time. And that slice and dice reporting then gives me the ability to drill down to any level of granularity, to slice and dice my assortment, look at various different reports like performance reports, how I'm performing to plan, etc. And we've got a whole slew of reports that will help you understand the performance of your assortments and whether those assortments are going to meet their objectives. All right. So I think that was a very quick overview of a very complex module, but hopefully that gives you an idea of what functionality is available to you as a user, whether it's in-season assortment planning or pre-season assortment planning and building out assortments from scratch. And I think we've got some time left now for the next 10 or so minutes to see if there are any questions. And May, do you have any questions from the team?
Yeah, I have a few. So the first question, can you differentiate assortments for other channels like wholesale and even specific wholesale customers?
Yes, that's a very good question. So when we think about any one of these assortments and we think about how we develop and create the clustering, the clusters that we develop are based on groupings of locations and or customers. So in my particular examples here for this demonstration, my clusters include only my web channel, my e-commerce channel, as well as my stores channel. But independently, we could also have a wholesale cluster. We could have wholesale top premium accounts. We could have wholesale other accounts, and we could even have Nordstrom A accounts, Nordstrom B accounts, Nordstrom C accounts. It all depends on what level of granularity it is important to differentiate the assortment between those wholesale accounts. I could also create a completely independent assortment. So in here, when I'm developing my assortment, I could have an assortment that is focused on my e-com channel or my retail channel, my direct-to-consumer channel. Or I could just filter that out and have an assortment that is wholesale focused only and have independent teams working in the wholesale channel versus the retail channel. So it all depends on how you think about your channels, how you think about your assortments, whether you plan them together, whether you plan them independently, and then how you think about grouping your customers, whether they are grouped together, all of your mom and pop stores, or you want to have specific clusters that support your Nordstrom A grade stores, Nordstrom B grade stores, as an example. Okay.
Great. Awesome. The next question, if you copy or repeat an item from season to season, does it retain the same starting date? Or is it possible to automatically apply a shift or a lag to have it start 2 weeks later?
That's an interesting question. So let's jump forward into that example that we were just looking at. I'm just going to change to my knit tops holiday 2024, and I'm actually going to look at this product. So let's just copy that. We'll just focus in on this product very quickly. I'm just going to go title, put that product in, and I'm actually going to look at this product for the entire year. So for 2024. And what's important to understand here, if I group by, let's just group by the style over here, you can actually have independent plans for products at different points in time. So if I look at this product over here, I had a plan, it was running from 2022 and I continued it all the way through to August of 2024. I'm now going to take a break. I'm not going to offer that product, but I'm bringing it back in November 2024. To the exact question that was asked, I can shift that date whenever I want to. If I'm repeating that product, I can repeat it in January, February, March, whenever I want to. I can simply just specify the date that I want to repeat it. What's important to understand is that these products are linked. Because I've repeated it and it's an actual product, they are linked. So not only can I group them together and see them together, I can also click on the arrow at the grouped level, and I can then see the metrics as they flow over time. So you'll see over there, my one product was selling all the way through to the end of August. Then I'm not planning to sell it. And then I am planning to sell it again in November. But if I looked at any individual one of those products, we would just have a plan for that particular time period. In this case, I'm looking at my November one, so I'm looking at that plan for that particular time period. So what this gives you the ability to do is actually change the entire concept of how you might want to offer this product in November versus how you have offered it. Maybe historically you only offered it in your web channel. Now you want to expand it to your stores channel. And you can add a completely different cluster set to it in terms of which locations it's going to go to and where you're going to offer that product. But you can still see everything in context of those products moving over time and the sales flowing over time. But not just the sales, we would also think about it from the perspective of the inventory. So if I just change my view very quickly, I know I'm taking a long time to answer this question, but it's an important concept. If I have those sales that are flowing over time, I can also think about how much inventory I have, how much inventory I have historically had, how much I'm projected to have at the end of this time period, plus whatever receipts that I might be bringing in during this time period, which means what am I starting on in November 2024 and how am I going to sell through that inventory in the future? And that's a really important picture to understand. We don't just repeat the product, we're actually carrying the inventory from one period into the next period so we know what the starting point for the next period is going to be. Okay.
Great. Another interesting question. So can the tool be used by vendors and manufacturers to generate a visual line list and shared with potential retail partners that says, here's what's available to purchase, please provide us with anticipated quantities?
Yeah, so the visualization, as we talked about there, the visualization is really easy. And if I just go back to my gallery view over here, we can play with some of the views. In the gallery view, we have the ability to not only view the products for whatever time frame, and I'm just going to get a nice pretty one because it's always nicer to see, but I can view all of those products, but I can also control what information is shown over here in this gallery view, and I can control the kind of density of how we want to see it, especially if you've got a lot of products. But I can create different views over here. In this case, it's a category view for summer 2024. Again, maybe instead of grouping by division, I'm going to group by class. But what I actually changed here is the data that's showing. So this is showing what the product is, what the name of the product is, the price points that I'm expecting, when the product is launching, but I'm also then showing some metrics associated with that product, what we would ideally like to sell for that product or buy for that product, what our margin is expectation is going to be for the product. And this view can be exported in a PDF or into Excel and can be emailed directly to customers if we want to, or directly to vendors, directly to whoever it needs to be. We can actually take that visual view with whichever metrics and data elements you want to see in here, and we can export it all out and send it to whoever the relevant parties are.
Great. I have two pretty straightforward questions for you, so I'll just read them both right now. Will you be able to pull past data, or is it just from implementation on? And then the other one is, in lieu of style color level, is there a way to view it at the style level only?
100%. Great questions. All right, so let's go out of we'll go back into our grid view over here and understand that compare mode a little bit more. So the compare mode provides you information as far back as you have history. So if you provide us history from 2022, we would be able to show that history all the way back to 2022 or 2021. So it's relevant to the data that you send us. Typically, our customers are bringing somewhere between 1 and 3 years of history into the system when we first implement Toolio. And that gives us the basis to calculate sales curves and size curves and all of that. I didn't really talk very much about some of the other intelligence concepts over here. Like coming up with the size curve, we use historic data to actually come up with what the ideal size curve is going to be. And we calculate that at the lowest level of granularity. That relies on historic data. And typically we use his cleansed, I'll just use that term, cleansed historic data. We use it from whatever time period you provide to us. As I said, somewhere between 1 and 3 years of history is typical when we implement a project. And your second question was, can you group by style? 100%. So in that example, actually, I actually covered it in this example. But if I were to, I can actually group by anything. So let me go to my in-season view again, because that's going to be the best way of looking at it. When I do my grouping over here, I can group by the style. I can group by whatever else I want to. So I'm going to group by the title over here. And what you'll see is there's a little number that then appears. So if we've got a product like this, it's got 3 different versions underneath it. It's got a red, a green, and a brownish version that looks like, or reddish version that looks like. So you'll see that I can group it by that. But I don't just have to group it by that, by a title or a style or whatever it might be. I could also group it by the class of the product. And then I can control the grouping over here to be able to say, okay, now I want to group within the context of the style or the class of the product. Now I can see I've got 11 t-shirts. I can drill into all of those 11 t-shirts. And by the way, again, if I click on that button over there, the drop down, it is then going to aggregate all of my t-shirts so that I can see the entire plan for t-shirts right there in the snapshot. I don't have to go to reporting. I can actually see the roll up of those plans across all 11 t-shirts in my example over here. Okay.
Great. And then I think we'll squeeze in one more question. Can you incorporate
Sure.
promotions into your plan?
Yes. Actually, let's look at this example. It might be a good example. So one of the things that you'll notice over here in this particular projection is if we look at that projection, those spikes over there, some of those spikes are going to be related to normal seasonality, but some of these spikes might be related to something else. And there is another metric that you see over here in terms of, you'll see there's a lift metric. That lift metric is associated with the promotions that we're planning to run on this particular product. So not only is it providing a lift in the demand for the product, it can also incorporate a margin impact on that particular product. So what is the discount that we're offering so that we can understand the true retail expectation of the product after we have taken that discount? And all of those different promotions can actually be set up right in Toolio. So I've got my promotional causals tab over there. And in that promotional causal, I can go and define which weeks the promotion is running for, what sort of lift I'm planning, which locations are eligible for that promotion. In this case, all locations. And I can filter it down to say only certain products are going to get the promotion. So yeah, incorporating promotions built in part of the plan. We also have a concept of return profiles. And what a return profile allows you to do is plan for returns and also plan for the reusability of that inventory that is returned. That is all incorporated in your projection of how much inventory you should buy based on how much returns you're expecting to come back and how reusable those returns are, or do we have to destroy those returns? What percentage of the returns need to get destroyed, etc. So those are all added features that are incorporated in the assortment planning tool. All of these surrounding features like promotion planning, returns, presentation profiles, size curves, sales curves, these are all things that are incorporated as part of the assortment planning process in general. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you, Peter, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great
Fantastic.
rest of your day.